Hello, and welcome to, I guess, a quick little tutorial, a show and tell on how I achieved a special effect that I'm using for an animation that I'm working on. This is a sort of polygonal mushroom cloud that I had to sort of figure out how to invent and animate in order to keep my low poly style, but at the same time make a magical poofy cloud, a magical mushroom cloud that sort of dissipates and without fading out, sort of naturally comes to an end. And I figured I might as well show you how I did this, because this is something that isn't really all that straightforward if you're not familiar with some of the tools. And this isn't, obviously not restricted to a nuclear poofy cloud. You could take parts of this whole contraption and turn it 90 degrees, and now you have a cannon blast. Put a cannon over here and a bullet flying at the front of it. Boom. Or a plasma bolt maybe. Or you could take it all the way upside down, and you could put the bottom part on the floor, and then you have like a meteor shooting through the sky and landing on the ground. I don't know. You could have fun with it, you could make a lot of things happen with this. But the point here is how to make a donut revolve around itself from the inside out like this. And I'm mainly using a couple of deformers to do it. If I enable deformers, you can see here that I have a couple of handles that are moving around. It's basically bend deformers and flare deformers and then twist deformers, and that's it. Coupled with a few rotations and scale animations on the actual objects themselves. So I'll just go to a new scene. I figured I'll show you what I did. Basically, all you need to do is go to File and Import, and then you'll have this file called Mushroom Cloud, and you just import that, and well, there you go, bam, you're done. You have the cloud all set up and ready to go, free to use as you choose. No, that's actually just my other scene. First of all, we are gonna need a cylinder. I'm gonna say that this is not where I started. This was not where my brain went initially. I'm not that smart. I thought that I was gonna go with one of these because, it's basically the shape that we're after. It's basically a donut, mushroom cloudy donut. You could just animate it up and scale it out, right? But I don't know how to make that rotate around its own axis from the inside out, so I'm gonna go with a cylinder. Now, what I did was I made a slightly bumpy tube, first of all. So I'm just gonna go ahead and bump this up a bit, as it were. For this, I usually tend to use the sculpting tools up here. So this is how I use, this is usually how I do a lot of my hair as well. When I make my new characters for animations, I tend to go and do the actual shape of the hair manually with, regular old tried and true modeling tools. But then I usually go in at the end with this and just sort of make it a bit uneven, rough it up a bit, make it sort of more organic in a way. I think that the sculpting tools in general are a very good way of making things feel less uniform and less perfect, which is usually a big sort of downside and a big problem when you're doing 3D in general, that everything tends to be too symmetrical, too smooth, and too just perfect, because everything starts out perfect in terms of shapes and just general form. So here we go. Here we have an irregular bumpy tube. That's good enough for us for now. So I want to do a couple of things. I want to first of all hit Shift-Alt-D to delete the history. And then I want to also go to Modify, Freeze Transformations, and freeze everything. So now we have a separate, unique object with no history, no transformation attributes, nothing. It's just there. This is it. After this, I'll want to go ahead and add some deformers. Now, the thing is, I want to keep this rotation axis, right? So what I had to do here is to go into the Rigging tab and select Deform, Nonlinear, and then Bend. Now, it's oriented the wrong way. per default. So if I do this, if I expand the curvature, nothing really happens. But watch this. If I twist it on its side, oh, wow, we have made a Cheeto. And thank you for watching my Cheeto tutorial. You can hit the like button a couple of times and leave a comment, and also rate this video 5 stars and add it to your favorites. But we're not done here. We're not done yet, because if you keep going, you'll see what's happening here. If we go up to 180, you'll connect the donut at the back end here. And what's very nice about this system is that when we do the same rotation like we did before, look at that. We're still keeping the bend deformer, but the rotation is separate from that. I could rotate it around this axis, I could rotate it around this axis, and it'll make crazy stuff happen. But this is the thing we want. This is what we want to achieve. Now, basically that's it for the general shape of the cloud, or the general motion of the cloud. So I'll just group all of this and make a top cloud group. I'll center the pivot, and I'll move it generally to the center of the stage here, because we want to use some scale attributes here, and I want the cloud to scale from the center. So I'll hold a D down and just move this into the rough center. It isn't an exact science because this is a cloud and it's not going to be 100% symmetrical anyway, but I do want it to scale from the middle out. So while having the group selected, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set a keyframe around, I don't know, let's say frame 50 and then 20. For the 21, I'm going to scale it in and scale it down and just hide it in the center, somewhere around there. And then on frame 50, I'm gonna go ahead and move it up, scale it out a bit, just make it a big poofy cloud. And then for the actual dissipation of this cloud, I'm not gonna scale the group, I'm gonna scale the torus itself, or the cylinder itself. So let's see, what do we wanna do? We wanna scale it around these two axes, X and Y, not Z. Because if you scale it around the Z axis, then you're gonna end up doing this accordion effect, which might be something you're into, you know, go nuts. But we want X and Y, and set keyframes for both of them, go forwards about 10 frames, let's say, and set them both to 0.01. I'm not gonna set them to fully 0, because sometimes that can cause issues with how Maya is representing the shapes. But what I'm gonna do is at frame 60, I'm gonna set a keyframe for the visibility, and on frame 61, I'm gonna keyframe the visibility to off, so that it's just completely gone. It goes up and then it shrinks and it's gone. Now, all we need to do for this last bit is to add the billowing sort of smoky rotation, which is around the Z-axis, Z-axis, however you want to say it. Go nuts. So we'll set a keyframe for the rotation at 0, and then we'll go forward until it's all gone and rotate it, I don't know, let's say -400. Okay, that's moving in the wrong direction. I meant, obviously, I meant +400. And there you go. Now we have a nice rolling cylinder effect. It's rolling outwards as it is rising. What I ended up doing for the actual rotation animation, just to make it a bit more, I guess, dynamic, organic, not so uniform, is I went into the animation curves here, and for the rotation, I set another keyframe about all the way up at the top when it stops rising. I set another keyframe, and I sort of evened it out a little bit, so it plateaus. It moves fast, and then it sort of plateaus a bit, and then as it starts to shrink down, it speeds up a little bit again. So we have a nice sort of settling, and then zoom, it speeds up a bit again. So by now you have the general animation, right? By now it's all about the timing, and obviously for the actual the actual contraction of the torus here, I'd personally like it to build and go faster. You know, it happens a bit too slowly and too like uniformly as it is. So I'm gonna set these to weighted tangents and unlock them, and then I'm gonna just go ahead and fiddle around with these until I have an effect that I like. You could go either way here. You could go have it start slowly and then quickly shoop, or the other direction, start quickly and then thin out for a longer while as the torus is sort of disappearing. I think I'd prefer it if it's going in this direction. So there we have the donut smoke cloud. So for the bottom part of this cloud, all I wanted to do was basically duplicating this group and moving it to the floor. So I'll select the whole group. I'll show you the outliner here. I'll go into Edit, Duplicate Special, and Option Box. So normally you'd start with this tool like this. We want to make it a copy, not an instance, and we want to make it under world, not a parent. And we want to make sure that we also duplicate the input graph, meaning all the connections to the deformer, the thing that makes it a circle, all of this, all the animation is duplicated as well. So we'll duplicate that and we'll move the whole thing down. Now we have another group with the same animation playing, but on the floor. Good start. All I want to do now is to make sure that this group is, first of all, not moving, because we don't want this group to move anywhere. This cloud is anchored to the floor. So I'll break all the connections and we'll just have it sit there doing nothing for now. It's also rolling in the wrong direction because we want it to billow out, not roll out onto the floor. So I'll go into the graph editor again. And for now, I'll delete the keyframes that control the scale. I don't want it to scale down and disappear in the same way the top part is doing. So I'll delete those frames, and now we only have the rotation left. It's rotating and then it's disappearing because we've keyframed the visibility. All I really want to do here is select the rotation, hit F to scale it, to center it, to frame. I'll delete the middle one that we added, and then I'll basically just go in and sort of reverse this whole thing, because we want it to billow from within, rolling out over the floor rather than rolling like a sausage. So now it's coming from within. It's coming from the epicenter of the explosion, and it's billowing outwards. And then we'll just do the same thing we did with the top bit. We'll select the whole group and we'll scale it. So we'll go from the start of the animation, which is around here, and then we'll scale it out to maybe 40, and that should be it. So we'll scale this down. I'll just scale it in some few directions here and sort of hide it in the center, in the middle here. And then you can see when I play it, it does that rolling animation as if more is added from the bottom. More energy, more smoke is added to this cloud from the bottom rather than from the top and rolling outwards. So there you have those two effects together. What I ended up doing for this was to just go into the group again and very quickly scale it down. So it disappears on frame 61. So let's scale it down very quickly and just make it sort of implode on itself. Now we have this. Now you can start tweaking the timing. So for this group, for example, I want it to move up faster and settle in the air. So I'll go into the graph editor. I'll select the translate, which is the up and down, translate Y. And I'll again select the curve and set the tangents to weighted. I'll break them and unlock them, and then I'll just make it move quicker at the start. So this is basically movement over time, right? So it moves quicker at the start. Actually, I want this to be fully zeroed out. So I want this to move very quickly at the start and then sort of stop in the air like that. I might move this forward a few frames just to sort of give the bottom cloud a couple of frames to sort of start billowing out before the top mushroom bit kicks in. So we have the two main parts here. Now I'll go ahead and add the connecting pillar between the two. I might even go into the bottom group, and scale it out a bit more. So I want this cloud to be bigger, and then it starts to implode on itself. It can shrink over time here, that's fine. I just want the apex of them both to not be at the same width, because it looks kind of weird. So we have that, and then it sort of implodes on itself. And then we'll go ahead and we'll add the pillar in the middle. Again, I'll make another cylinder. I won't duplicate this time around because this is such a different shape. So I'll just start from scratch. I'll make a pillar. I'll make a tube actually. I'll delete the caps, and we will sort of just make this an irregular shape, kind of. Holding down the B and dragging the middle mouse button lets you soft select. So I'll soft select the middle of it. I'll make it a bit sort of tornado shaped, a little bit irregular. I'll again use the sculpting tools to just make it sort of bumpy and sort of uneven and whatever else I feel like fits this sort of type of pylon shape. I don't know. Just so that it doesn't look like a straight cylinder, basically. Again, down to taste and whatever. But here we go. So we have this going for us. Now all I want to do here is add a flare deformer to this cylinder, and we'll also do a twist in a bit. But I'll start with this and I'll show you what the flare does. So if I select just the cylinder and the flare deformer and hit Shift I can solo these. I'll show you the flare deformer basically, well, as indicated by the name, it flares. So you can flare the bottom out, you can flare the top out, and you can change how that curve is happening if you want a more hourglass shape or a more bulgy shape. It's a flare. You can flare the jeans on a model with this if you have a model with jeans on it. Go for it. So I'll select nothing and hit Shift I again to get everything back. And I want to align the top of this with the inner part of this torus. So I'll go to the flare and I'll set the the end flare to sort of line up with this torus here, to hide the edges inside it. And I'll do the same with the start flare. This is less important, I guess, because you're not gonna see this anyway, but I'll do it, and then I'll change the curve to be more of an apple core-y kind of shape. So we have the flare, we have everything connecting to each other. So I'll take both of these and I'll group them and I'll scale them up along the y-axis to match up with this torus, just in height for now. And I'll set a keyframe for the Y. And then I'll go back through the animation to frame 20. I'll scale it down. I'm only scaling it in the Y-axis for now. We're only flattening it. We're only making it align with the height of this animation for now. So I'll go back into the curves. I'll select the curve for the scale in the Y-axis. Do the same thing again, weighted tangents, and unlock them so that I can sort of sync this up, because remember, for the animation of this, we made it a special type of curve that starts quick and then slows down. So I want to sort of mimic that in this, where I have the pillar start to rise quickly and then sort of catch up with the cloud. So it's rising quickly and it's catching up with the cloud on the top there. Now it's moving fairly in sync with the top cloud. Now all I want to do is select the flare deformer and go ahead and just match it up with the actual shape of the of the cloud itself. So once we're at the apex here, we know that this is how wide we want the flare to be. So we'll set a keyframe for those, and same with the bottom flare. And then we'll go back in time to where it's smaller and lower and everything is more contracted. And I'll go ahead and just shrink everything together to still be hidden within the space cloud. And same for the top part. I'll go ahead and shrink everything together to still be hidden within the top torus. And I'll go back to the very start, which is frame 20. For this bit, I'll just scale it down. I'll just scale the whole group down, and I'll hide it within the bottom bit. We'll see what's happening here. We have a torus that is hiding the top bit, we have a torus that's hiding the bottom bit, and we have a cylinder in the middle that's stretching along with those two shapes. And somewhere around here, I'll just go ahead and set a keyframe for scale. So we want it to shrink this way, right? So this is X and Z. So I'll set keyframes for those, and then once we want it to be gone, which is on frame 59, I'll set both of these to 0.01. Again, same as the top torus. And for frame 60, I'll just keyframe the visibility off. You can see where the basic animation comes together, and sort of what I did with the original mushroom cloud. Of course, the shape of the torus here could be a bit more bumpy. Could do well with some more bumps. That's all right with me. Now, all I want to do is add a twist to this bottom pillar. The twist, basically all it does is, well, it twists. So I'll add I'll add a keyframe at, say, I don't know. What do you think is a good one? 25, frame 25? I'll add one here. I'll go forward and I'll add another one here. Just to sort of give it some motion. I'm gonna add a sine deformer. Now what the sine deformer does is it creates tiny waves. Well, you can make big waves as well, but it creates waves in a shape. So I'll show you here. This is the deformer. For some reason it starts at an axis, but let's make it not do that. So we have a deformer here that is creating a sine shape, a sine curve. And as you change the wavelength and the offset and everything, you can make it do crazy stuff. So I'll put the amplitude, the height of the waves, to a very low number, 0.05. Let's see how that looks. That's still too much, 0.01. And if I now animate the offset, you can see that it creates like a rippling effect. It just makes the whole surface sort of weirdly undulate and change over time. So what I did was I'll just set a keyframe at the very start and at just far into the future, and change the number slightly. And now you can see that this whole deformer is rippling, and it just makes this shape sort of undulate and ripple and feel more uneven over time. It's not a smooth shape that's just rotating, but it's also like jittering a bit and bumping around a bit. The last thing I did, just to be on the very safe side, is I keyframed the visibility of everything right at the very start. So we'll have the visibility of the torus keyframe on when it starts to animate, which is frame 22. We'll keyframe the visibility on here and the visibility off on the frame before it. Same with the bottom bit. We'll keyframe the visibility on, say, on frame 21 when things start to move, and keyframe it off on 20. And for the pillar, same deal. It starts to rise around here, so we'll keyframe visibility on and visibility off. And now we'll have a cloud that appears out of nowhere and goes back to being nowhere. I'll turn off the deformers again and we'll see how that looks. that is the basic principle of this effect. How I did this sort of rotating torus that's rotating from within, and a counter-rotating torus on the bottom with a pillar in between the two connecting them. Now obviously for this one, I spent some more time perfecting the actual bumpiness of the torus and the shape of the general cloud itself, but you can see that it's still the same principle. It's using everything that I just showed you. It's just a little bit more refined in terms of the shape. But we still have the pillar in the middle. It's still not really connected to the torus at all, or to the bottom at all. It's just a pillar in the middle of the two, and this is just a bend deformer on an otherwise rotating cylinder. That is the polygonal mushroom cloud effect, made with a couple of deformers and 3 basic shapes in Maya. I hope you found this useful and enjoy making your impacts or your craters or your bullets being shot out of polygonal guns for some reason. I don't know. I wanted to show it off anyway. So hope you enjoyed. Take care.